There comes a time in every person's life when something breaks. Not just a plan, not a dream, but something inside. You wake up one morning, and the world doesn't look the same. Everything you thought you could count on, people, stability, purpose, suddenly collapses. And you feel this unbearable silence, as if the universe itself has turned away. It's in that moment you ask the question that changes everything. Why me? Carl Jung once said, "Only the wounded physician heals." He believed that every great transformation begins in the ruins of what we once were. Resilience, according to Jung, isn't built in comfort. It's born in collapse. But to understand this, we must first face something terrifying. The truth that life will break you. The loss, the betrayal, the failure. These aren't accidents. They are psychological earthquakes designed to expose the foundation of who you really are. Because until life strips away what's false, you can't know what's real. But here's the thing no one tells you. When life breaks you, it's not trying to destroy you. It's trying to reveal you. Jung called this moment the confrontation with the shadow. It's when everything you've buried, your fears, your insecurities, your dependency on others, comes rising to the surface, demanding to be seen. And that's the moment most people run. They drown themselves in distractions, hide behind positivity, or pretend they're fine. But the pain doesn't disappear. It waits, quietly, patiently, until you're finally forced to look at it. You see, Jung believed that the human spirit doesn't grow through escape. It grows through confrontation. The point of breaking isn't to end you. It's to make you face the parts of yourself you've been too afraid to meet, because only then can you truly transform. When life breaks you, it removes the masks. You're no longer the role you play at work, the identity you cling to in relationships, the image you project to others. You're just you, raw, uncertain, exposed. And it's there, in that nakedness, where the possibility of real strength is born. Resilience isn't built by pretending the pain isn't real. It's built by sitting in it, fully, by asking, what is this pain trying to teach me? Instead of, how can I make it stop? Jung once wrote, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. And that's the paradox of resilience. You can't become strong by avoiding what hurts you. You become strong by walking straight into it. Imagine a seed buried deep in the earth, in darkness, alone. For the seed, it must feel like death, the crushing weight of soil, the suffocating stillness. But that pressure, that darkness, is the very thing that awakens its life. It's what cracks the shell open. That's what pain does to us. It breaks our outer casing, so our real self can emerge. When you lose everything you thought you needed, you begin to discover what truly matters. You realize that meaning isn't found in control, it's found in surrender. Jung saw resilience not as endurance but as transformation. He said the soul doesn't seek comfort, it seeks growth. So when life breaks you, your soul is not asking for escape, it's asking for evolution. It's in the heartbreaks, the failures, the nights you couldn't stop crying, that your soul was being forged. The pain was the fire, and you were the iron. The question is, will you let that fire harden you or shape you? Every person watching this right now has felt it, the feeling of losing something that defined you. Maybe it was a person, maybe it was a dream, maybe it was the version of yourself you thought would finally be enough. But when that thing shattered, it left behind a silence that scared you. Because you didn't just lose what you loved, you lost who you were with it. That's where Jung's philosophy becomes life-changing. He teaches us that resilience is not about bouncing back. It's about becoming someone new. You're not meant to return to who you were before the pain. You're meant to evolve because of it. You're meant to see yourself clearly for the first time, without the illusions, without the masks, without the lies. That's the beginning of true resilience. Not pretending everything's fine, but realizing you've survived something that could have destroyed you, and you're still here. Maybe broken, maybe uncertain, but here. And that here is the starting point of transformation. Because as Jung wrote, in all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order. The breaking was never random. It was the invitation to discover the order that's been waiting behind the chaos all along. Every person who has ever survived deep pain eventually faces one haunting question. What now? You've lost what you thought you needed. The world feels foreign, and you no longer recognize yourself. It was as if life burned down the house of your identity and left you standing in the ashes. And while most people spend years trying to rebuild the same old structure, Jung would whisper something radically different. Don't rebuild, recreate. Because according to Carl Jung, resilience isn't about returning to what was, it's about creating meaning from what is. He believed that the only way to survive the unbearable, heartbreak, loss, trauma, failure, is to find meaning inside it. Not the kind of forced optimism people preach online, but a deep, authentic understanding that your suffering can be your teacher, if you're brave enough to listen. Jung's philosophy was rooted in a powerful truth. When you suffer without meaning, you crumble. But when you assign meaning to your suffering, you rise. It's not the pain that destroys you. It's the belief that the pain is pointless. That's why two people can go through the same storm. One becomes bitter, the other becomes wise. The difference isn't in what happened. The difference is in what they decided it meant. Jung once said, "Man cannot stand a meaningless life." He saw that modern humans weren't destroyed by hardship itself, but by the emptiness that follows when we no longer see purpose in what's happening to us. When life breaks you, your task is not to ask, "Why did this happen to me?" but rather, "What is this trying to reveal in me?" Because every time pain enters your life, it carries a message, a whisper from your unconscious, pointing towards something you've ignored, a lesson, a truth, a part of yourself still waiting to be integrated. Jung believed the soul doesn't waste pain. It uses it as a signal that transformation is near. Imagine a sculptor standing before a block of marble. To someone else, it looks like destruction, pieces breaking away, fragments falling to the ground. But to the sculptor, every strike has purpose. Each blow reveals the shape within. That's what life is doing to you when it breaks you. The pain isn't random. It's carving you into who you were meant to be. But here's where most people go wrong. They fight the sculptor. They resist the process, beg for the old form to return, not realizing that what's being taken away was never the final version of them. It was just the rough outline. Jung's teaching on resilience is simple, but devastatingly profound. Your pain is not the end of your story. It's the invitation to rewrite it. When you begin to see your pain as purposeful, everything changes. You stop feeling like a victim of circumstance and start realizing you're a participant in your own evolution. For Jung, this realization was the key to psychological survival. He observed that people who could find personal meaning in suffering, even the most devastating kind, didn't just recover, they grew. Think of Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust and later built his life's work on the same principle Jung spoke of. Those who find meaning in suffering can endure almost anything. Frankl called it tragic optimism. Jung called it transformation through the shadow. Both were saying the same thing, that suffering without meaning is despair, but suffering with meaning is rebirth. And meaning doesn't appear on its own. You have to create it. Ask yourself, what did this pain force me to see? What illusion did it destroy? What strength did it demand from me that I never knew I had? That's where resilience begins, not when the pain stops, but when you start to make sense of it. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Pain, in his eyes, was a portal to consciousness, a way of pulling what's hidden in the dark into the light of awareness. When you start to face what your suffering is trying to teach you, you stop being controlled by it. This is the moment when something incredible happens. You start to feel alive again, not because the circumstances changed, but because you changed. Pain that once felt meaningless starts to glow with a quiet purpose. You see that it was never trying to punish you. It was trying to prepare you. Let's be honest. Building resilience is not a gentle process. It's brutal. It's waking up every day to the ache inside you and choosing to grow anyway. It's looking in the mirror and seeing both the wound and the warrior. It's saying, yes, this hurt me, but it also showed me who I am. That's what Jung meant when he said that the soul finds its greatest strength in its greatest weakness. He didn't believe in avoiding the dark nights of the soul. He believed in walking through them with awareness, because that's where the soul reclaims its power. And if you stay in that darkness long enough, you begin to notice something strange. The pain that once felt like your enemy begins to feel like your guide. You stop running from it. You start learning from it. That's when resilience stops being something you try to build. It becomes something you are. You become resilient not because you never break, but because you now understand that breaking was never the end. It was the beginning. When life broke you, it wasn't destroying you. It was asking you to evolve, to shed the layers of your false self and awaken the deeper truth beneath. Pain becomes sacred when you let it transform you. And the person who rises from that pain isn't the same person who fell. They carry depth. They carry empathy. They carry a quiet power that can't be faked. That's the heart of Jungian resilience. You stop searching for strength outside of you, because you realize it's been forged inside you all along. There's a moment in every collapse when you think it's over. When the light goes out and you whisper to yourself, I can't do this anymore. That's the moment most people try to escape. They numb it, deny it, distract themselves from it. But Carl Jung believed that this exact moment of darkness isn't your ending. It's your beginning. Because resilience isn't born in the light. It's born when you finally face what you've been running from, your shadow. Jung called the shadow everything about yourself that you've rejected, repressed, or hidden. Your anger, your envy, your insecurities, the pain you never processed, the guilt you buried so deep you forgot it existed. And here's the paradox. The more you deny your shadow, the more control it gains over your life. You start repeating toxic relationships, sabotaging success, chasing validation, all without realizing you're being driven by the parts of yourself you refuse to see. But when life breaks you, the mask cracks. Suddenly, everything you've avoided rushes to the surface, and that's where the real work begins. Most people think resilience means bouncing back. Jung would laugh at that idea. He'd say, no, resilience means integrating what broke you, not pretending it never happened. When you integrate the shadow, you stop being half alive. You stop pretending to be all light. You start becoming whole. You realize that your darkness isn't your enemy. It's your potential in disguise. Let me explain this through a truth Jung often hinted at. Everything you despise about yourself holds a fragment of power. Your anger, it's your buried strength. Your jealousy, it's your unacknowledged desire. Your fear, it's your intuition, twisted by suppression. Your shame, it's your honesty, exiled from your identity. When you bring these things into awareness, not to glorify them, but to understand them, you transform chaos into clarity. That's shadow integration, and that's where real resilience lives. Jung used to say, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Because the truth is, your power has always been hiding in the places you were too afraid to look. Think about it. When you hit rock bottom, when everything falls apart, what happens? You start to see yourself without filters. The persona, the false image you built for the world, begins to crumble. And beneath it, you find something real, something raw, something indestructible. That's the shadow showing you who you really are. But here's the catch. Facing your shadow feels like death, because in a way, it is. It's the death of the old identity, the one built on approval, image, and comfort. Jung called this the dark night of the soul. It's not poetic, it's painful. You lose people, you lose certainty, you even lose your sense of self. But what's really dying is your illusion of control. And once that illusion burns away, what's left is the truth. The truth that you don't need to be perfect to be strong. You don't need to be light to be good. You don't need to be fearless to be powerful. You just need to be whole. Resilience, in Jung's philosophy, isn't about standing tall all the time. It's about learning to kneel in the dark and listen, because that's where your transformation begins, not when you conquer the darkness, but when you learn to coexist with it. Jung believed that our greatest suffering comes from trying to live only in one half of ourselves, only in light, only in goodness, only in control. But a life that rejects darkness is shallow. It's fragile. It shatters the moment life gets real. So if you truly want to build resilience, you have to let go of the fantasy that healing means never hurting again. Healing means you can hurt and still keep your heart open. That's what Jung called the union of opposites, the ability to hold both light and dark without falling apart. Let me give you an image. Imagine a tree standing in the middle of a storm. Its roots are deep, not because it avoided the rain, but because it endured it. Every gust of wind forced those roots to dig deeper into the soil. That's resilience. Not resistance, rooting. You don't build strength by avoiding your darkness. You build it by going so deep within it that you find your own ground again. And once you do, the world can shake, but you won't fall. When you start integrating your shadow, something magical happens. The things that once triggered you begin to teach you. The people who used to hurt you lose their power. You stop being afraid of failure because you understand it's just another mirror showing you where you still need to grow. And the same darkness that once broke you now becomes your armor. You start walking differently. You speak with calm confidence because you've met your monsters, and they didn't kill you. You've walked through hell and found yourself standing on the other side. Scarred, maybe, but stronger, wiser, real. That's the kind of resilience that can't be faked. Because it's not built on pretending everything's fine. It's built on knowing exactly how bad it can get, and still choosing to rise. Jung once said, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." That's the essence of his philosophy. Your resilience doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from descending into it with awareness, finding the lesson, and returning with light in your hands. You can't rise higher than the depth you've gone within yourself. And once you understand that, you stop being afraid of the dark altogether, because you realize the dark was never against you. It was building you. So if life has broken you, if you feel like you're walking through the ashes of who you once were, remember this. You are not broken beyond repair. You are being reforged. Every scar is a signature of survival. Every tear is proof that your soul is still alive. And the shadow that once haunted you is now the source of your greatest power. That's Jung's ultimate truth about resilience. When you stop fighting your darkness, you stop breaking every time life tests you. You stop surviving and start evolving. There comes a moment, after all the breaking, after all the darkness, when silence fills the room. It's not peace at first. It's strange. You wake up one morning and realize the pain that used to scream inside you has gone quiet. Not because it disappeared, but because you finally listened. This is the moment Jung called individuation, the rebirth of the self after walking through the fire. Individuation means becoming who you truly are, not who the world told you to be, not who you pretended to be to survive, but who you were meant to be beneath it all. It's not a process of addition. It's a process of subtraction. You lose your false identities one by one. The people pleaser dies. The perfectionist fades. The victim dissolves. And what remains is something shockingly simple. You. Raw, unfiltered, real. And the strange thing, when you reach this point, life still hurts sometimes, but it doesn't break you anymore. Because now, you understand what pain really is. A messenger, not a master. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." When you understand that, resilience takes on a whole new meaning. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What part of me is this trying to awaken?" Because the truth is, life is not punishing you. It's revealing you. Every collapse, every heartbreak, every failure, they're not the universe's cruelty. They're invitations to become conscious, to become real. You start to notice that resilience is not just endurance. It's awareness. You're no longer the same person who reacts blindly to pain. You observe it. You listen. You let it move through you like a storm passing over a mountain. You no longer shatter. You absorb. Because now you've built roots that run deep into your shadow. And something remarkable happens. The world no longer controls you. People's opinions lose their grip. Fear becomes fuel. Silence becomes strength. This is the quiet power of someone who's faced their own depths. They no longer seek validation because they've already met themselves. Imagine it like this. You've been standing at the edge of a forest your whole life. Behind you, the known world. Comfort, reputation, identity. Ahead, the unknown. Dark, wild, uncertain. Everyone warns you not to go there. They say, "That's dangerous. That's where people lose themselves." But Jung would smile and whisper, "That's exactly where you find yourself." And when you finally step into that forest, trembling, unsure but determined, you realize that the monsters you feared are just parts of you waiting to come home. Every step you take through that darkness reveals more light within you. Until one day, you emerge, not as who you were, but as who you've become. Resilience, in its purest form, isn't about bouncing back. It's about transforming. It's the ability to walk through your own destruction and still say, "I'm not done yet." It's not denial. It's not toxic positivity. It's knowing, yes, I was broken. Yes, I was lost. But I met myself there. And that encounter changes everything. Because once you've faced your inner darkness, no external darkness can scare you again. You stop living defensively. You start living deliberately. You stop trying to avoid pain. You start trying to understand it. And that understanding gives birth to something rare. Peace. Not the shallow peace of nothing's wrong, but the deep peace of, even when it's wrong, I'm okay. Jung called this the self, with a capital S. The union of your light and dark, your conscious and unconscious, your heaven and your hell. It's the point where you realize that the goal was never perfection. It was wholeness. And wholeness doesn't look pretty. It looks human. It looks like laughter with scars. It looks like eyes that have cried but still shine. It looks like you, after everything, still choosing to love, still choosing to hope, still choosing to try. That's resilience. Not being unbreakable, but being unafraid of breaking. And maybe that's what Carl Jung wanted all along. Not for us to become saints or scholars, but to become conscious beings. To walk through our pain and find meaning, not misery. To stop pretending we're okay and instead say, "I'm not okay, but I'm real." Because in a world obsessed with filters and masks, realness is rebellion. Realness is freedom. Realness is power. So, if you're watching this, if you've been through your own collapse, your own darkness, your own storm, I want you to remember something. Resilience is not about who you were before the pain. It's about who you become because of it. You're not returning to your old self. You're becoming someone new, someone deeper, someone wiser, someone who understands that pain isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of transformation. Because that's the secret Jung left for all of us. The moment you stop running from your darkness, you discover that it was never darkness at all. It was the doorway to your own light. So stop waiting for the world to get easier. Stop waiting to be saved. Turn inward. Listen to what your suffering is trying to teach you, because that's where your power lives. And when you rise again, you won't just survive life's storms. You'll walk through them like someone who's already seen the worst and still chooses to love, to create, to live. That's not just resilience, that's awakening. If this message touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because somewhere out there, someone else is walking through their own darkness, and your light might just guide them home. Because as Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are.